Hello, and thanks for joining us today. I'm super excited you could be here. Today, we have one of the coolest men I have ever known in my life or gotten to be able to know from all of his trainings and teachings throughout my career. As a matter of fact, he is a huge motivator that has helped me be able to grow our business to the size that it is and also help teach you a lot of the methodologies that he's taught me to be able to help you grow your business as well. So, with us today, I'm honored to have Jay Abraham. Now, Jay is the $50 billion man and highest paid marketing consultant, a proven business leader, and top executive coach in the United States. Now, as founder and CEO of the Abraham Group, Jay has spent his entire career solving complex problems and fixing underperforming businesses. Now, he has significantly increased the bottom line of over 10,000 clients in more than 1,000 industries and over 7,200 sub-industries worldwide. He has dealt with virtually every type of business scenario and issue. He has studied and solved almost every type of business question, challenge, and opportunity as well. Now, he has an uncanny ability to identify hidden assets, overlooked opportunities, underperforming activities, and undervalued possibilities that others just simply miss. It has earned him the respect of business leaders globally. Now, beyond that, he teaches clients that there are often more effective and profitable strategies beyond the single approach their industry typically uses. He helps them adapt successful concepts from other industries to gain a competitive edge. Now, he's renowned as a leading expert in the areas of permanence, exponential business growth, performance enhancement, risk reduction, and maximizing business assets. He's been featured extensively in all types of major publications, and with his depth of experience, strategic thinking, and strong communication skills, he is considered one of the world's foremost experts in revenue model generation, business model generation, strategic restructuring, and marketing as well. Now, he's helped raise the performance of countless businesses, even in adverse environments, by finding creative, preemptive solution to very complex problems. He is dedicated to advancing businesses, careers, and personal wealth. Jay, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. What a build up. That's actually impressive. It's rare that it's probably some of our PR kit, but it's rare that anybody does it that extensively. I'm a little bit blushy, but thank you. I hope I can live up to the expectations.
Look,
So
the reality is we could spend the entire time just talking about your accolades because you've done so much. And I want to start by just thanking you for what you've done for all of us entrepreneurs. I don't know. I wonder, do you really know how much you've touched so many people out there? I know your clients, but there's so many of us out there that you've touched. Like, you realize how many of us that you've out here in the world that you've helped?
in truth, it's become a little bit of a blur. In my youth, I was very aggressive in doing seminars and trainings. And the good news is a lot of it landed very well with a lot of people who were younger who became influencers and experts, and they've done a very nice job of perpetuating the methodology both for themselves and teaching it in a very ethical manner. So I have no idea, although I hope it's extensive because the work that I always tried to do, Ty, was designed to elevate people to a much higher level of thinking, acting, transacting, and contributing to their market. And if I've succeeded beyond my expectation, that's when you get to a certain age, your legacy value and the impact you can not have done, but can still continue to create societally and business on a world. And I've been blessed. You probably know I've been all over the world many times, so it's very interesting. But no, I mean, it's nice when I'm flattered about one thing. If I travel, it is not uncommon for people to come up to me from all over the world in a very joyous and appreciative way. I've never had anyone say, "You're an asshole. You stole my money. You ruined our life." It's fortuitously the opposite. So it's very gratifying. But you get to a point where you just do what you do, and you hope it has not just direct value, but that people are impacted enough that they share the belief system, the methodology with as many other people. It sounds like you've done it. So I'm grateful in behalf of myself, the body of work, and all the people you've helped. Thank you.
Well, I one of the biggest problems, and I appreciate that. One of the biggest problems that I've faced along the way, and a lot of our audience faces, and that you're masterful at fixing, are revenue leaks. Just the revenue that's leaking out of the business. So, what's your advice for how to identify the revenue leaks and then plug those leaks?
Uh, that's a great question. If you don't mind, I always will try to answer the question asked, but I have a tendency to want to do a little bit more context so that the answer has much more meaning and impact and people act on it. So the first thing I would do is have people understand that a lot of my early work was on variability. Variability means you do something one way, it produces X. You do it another, it can produce 2X or one half X. You do another, it can produce multiple X now, but even more X later. And it usually takes the same amount of time, effort, uh, opportunity. You deal in economic terms. I don't have my list here. Brian has it, but we have a list of something like 40 things that are assets nobody thinks about it: time, effort, interaction, leads, access to the market, your ad, your follow-up. We have many proprietary concepts. One of them is called RSO, revenue system optimization. It starts before the first mile and it ends at after the first mile. It looks at every interrelated activity you are currently engaged in right now on either a formal basis, informal basis, intermittent basis, episodic basis to generate your revenue. First of all, if you do anything formally, whether you spend money or it's organic, you are targeting a market. The question is the market you're targeting the most opportune, and are you targeting like shotgun or rifle? Is the message you are taking to the market and the proposition you are providing to stimulate a response the very best one you could do that's going to appeal to the maximum number of the most desirable people? Are you reducing the what's called the hurdle rate, the risk of starting a relationship? When you initiate a relationship, depending on whether it's a lead, whether it's an opt-in, whether it's a request for some item, resource, document, registration for a webinar, how do you not just follow up in a conventional and a herd mentality way? How do you start from that point and elevate the value of whatever it is and also bridge it to the value of whatever you are and whatever you're offering? How do you progress somebody through the process? If they buy one time, do you have products or services they should be buying continually? If they buy all you have, is there other ways to ethically monetize it? If you don't get the maximum conversion or revenue yield from what you're doing, why? I mean, so we start there. Then at the end of it, we say, what else could you do with the leads that don't convert, the buyers who buy one time and could buy many, the buyers who buy all the time but don't buy everything, the buyers who buy everything and you got nothing else to sell? What else can you do if you have distribution channels you're using for one thing? Is there a lot of variability amongst the salespeople? If one person's 5 times better than another, what can you model about that person that'll make the other salespeople at least 10, 20% better? Do you know who excels at what? Who's better at opening accounts? Who's better at different kinds of industries or scenarios? Who's better at selling different products? Who's better at holding margin? Who's better at retention? I'm giving you just a few of the things, but it's a starting point.
How did you, out of curiosity, develop and hone this skill as well as you have of finding these missed opportunities?
It was totally accidental. I guess my origin story would help everybody. And I haven't told it formally, excuse me, formally for many, many, many years. I used to use it as the opening of my training. So I got started the first uh, at the beginning at age 18. I had 2 children at 20. It was very difficult. I had no formal education, and the only people that would give me opportunity were very interesting entrepreneurs. They were qualitative, but they would not give me a salary. I was an eat what you kill. If you produced, you earned. If you didn't, you didn't. They could give a flying you know what about whether I spent a minute or 18 hours at whatever I was doing. All they cared about, you're delivering revenue and success or not. when you only eat when you earn, you realize what works, what doesn't, what works best. But I had the very wonderful, retrospectfully, it was miserable at the time since I was not guaranteed anything. I had the wonderful ability to be in 5, 6 different activities concurrently, meaning I could do hour here, 2 hours there, whatever it was. And as luck would have it, Ty, they were not in the same industry. Very important. After a couple of cycles of this, pardon me again, and doing about 10 or 15 industries, I made a profound and a life shifting realization. People in one industry do not have a clue how other people think, act, transact, market, strategize, just source leads, convert leads, communicate, nothing. And so I was able to take rather commonplace methodologies, techniques, approaches, concepts from the industries I'd been in, combine into certain hybrids, apply them to the new industries I was in. And we were like, I was the fair haired child. I was extraordinary. Entrepreneur Magazine grew 20,000% in a year and got sold for this is, I'm not, yeah, that was Entrepreneur Magazine. Icy Hot grew more than that in 18 months and got sold for a small fortune. I got into the newsletter business and all the newsletters I helped blew up. I got into the gold brokerage business and all of them blew up. Not because they thought I was brilliant, but just that I understood stuff they didn't. And then after I realized the power of that, I was on a mission. I was hopelessly curious. I wanted to learn everything I could about everything I could. And then one more overlap, and it's a complex story, but I'm telling it to you to answer your question. I also had the very good fortune, and I still do, of helping over 300 of the world's top experts. Tony Robbins' client, Damon John's client, Brian Tracy, I helped, late Stephen Covey, his son, Stephen M.R. Covey, Anthony Scaramucci, a co-founder of FedEx, all kinds of people. But they mostly came to me not for help with their methodology. They came for help to command greater value, greater economic yield out of their methodology, greater capability of demonstrating to the market its tangible value. But before they could do that, I had to get a compressed sort of a short course on their methodology. So I understand 300-400 expertises most people would never be exposed to. So you take all the experiences I've had, now it's over 1,000 industries, and it's real experience. A lot of people say, Ty, I've worked with 150,000 businesses. And it's not a lie, but it's not necessarily a total truth, because what they've done is present the same message, same, it's a keynote, it's a workshop, but it wasn't really rolling your sleeves up, being on the front lines of capitalism. I've spent the majority of my life not teaching, but doing, and being paid in correlation to the results I produce. So my context, my perspective, my worldview is much different than most theoretical experts. So I don't know if that helps you, but that's the answer to the question.
I love that. Another thing I've seen you talk a little bit about is geometric growth principles. So, how do
Sure.
you use these to be able to achieve exponential improvement with revenue and profit as well?
Well, you have to understand that it's easier to work on the geometry of a business than it is doing it linear and incremental. I always talk about getting out of the incremental zone and getting into the exponential zone, where everything you do, action, effort, dollar, people, everything is operating with optimal current and residual yield. And you can't do that if you don't have an understanding of the alternatives available to you. But I learned there's 2 ways to blow up a business. One is if you're lucky enough to find one breakthrough that just kills. It's a rarity. It is very difficult, not impossible, but it's much harder. The other is to improve many different activities, 10 or 15% each, because people don't understand that it works on the geometry of a business. 10 plus 10 plus 10 is 30. 10 times 10 times 10 is 1,000. So if you have, we created years ago, Tony Robbins has built the foundation with acknowledgement of his business mastery program on my 10-10-10. There's 3 ways to grow a business. You increase the number of buyers, you increase the size of the transaction ethically, you increase the frequency of purchase. And if you have nothing else to sell, the utility value means other ethical ways you can monetize that buyer relationship or even that prospect relationship. And if you increase three categories by only 10% each, it's not 10%, it's 33% when you extend it out. I don't give you all the math now, but I'll be happy to give you a chart you can put up for your people. If you double your numbers, it's 800% growth. So there are very safe, very powerful, very little understood, and very, very, very highly predictable ways to grow any business I guess you could say exponentially, and even more so to grow the bottom. Everyone talks about a 10x moonshot, and what they're telling you is 10x top line. And most people don't understand, to increase your top line 10x, very, very precarious. You're going to normally need a lot more capital, a lot more people, a lot more marketing, a lot more infrastructure, a lot more inventory. And a lot of times it actually diminishes your margin. Whereas I probably know 97 categories, not just ways, but whole categories with multiple techniques and tactics within each category for multiplying your bottom line 10x without having to really create the same kind of a correlation at the top. In other words, you don't have to double your top line to multiply your bottom line many times over. And that's sort of a secret that most people don't understand.
And it's interesting because I see a lot of entrepreneurs bragging about the top line when it's the bottom line that matters. So you're a master at this. What are some of the things that are the hidden assets in a business that are oftentimes overlooked that if you do address can actually accomplish 10x or more of the bottom line?
Well, let's take a look at sunk costs for a minute. You have sunk costs in ads you run. It depends on what you sell. Those ads produce either a sale or a lead. You convert some number of those. If it's a sale, then is it a one-time sale? Is it something that should be multiple? Are there other products or services people buy before, during, after, instead that could be added to that sale to redouble the profit each time that they purchase? Are there ways that you could more powerfully convert more people from your leads? Are there a way to monetize the leads that don't buy your product and get them to buy something so it recoups your sunk costs and gives you more money you can reinvest in marketing? Are you really understanding the lifetime value of different categories of buyers? All buyers aren't worth the same relative investment. All sources aren't worth the same relative investment. All ads don't produce buyers that are the same relative investment. And until you're either over or underspending on what you're doing. Anybody who arbitrarily decides they're going to, if they have paid marketing, advertising, they're going to give either a percent or a dollar amount every month. Whatever you're deciding, you're either committing too much or too little. You should understand three things. You should understand yield-based thinking. You should understand allowable acquisition cost. Allowable acquisition cost means when you know the relative value, not just on the first sale, but on predictable repeat sales in a time period, a year, lifetime, then do you know how much you can afford to not spend, but invest to acquire the first sale or the lead. A 2D, 3D entrepreneur investor, a 2D is the typical person out there. He or she looks at revenue minus expense equals profit. A 3D investor is much more strategic. He or she says, I don't care about just the moment. I want to know all the compound residual recurring yield I get on this asset called a lead, or this asset called a buyer, or this asset called a salesperson, this asset called a distribution channel, or this asset called a prospect. And unless you really understand that, you're under optimizing what you're doing. Those are a couple of things, but I mean, I can go on. There are the biggest, if you have any infrastructure, any employees team, the biggest, there's variability. There's variability, as I said, in salespeople, and you can fix that. I mean, if one salesperson is massively more successful than another, there's 8 or 9 sub elements in that. you can figure what he or she does differently, you can model it out. If you can figure that certain people are specialists and are 3, 4 times better at a certain thing, opening accounts or different industries or different scenarios, we've doubled business just by making people who were doing everything but had one real superpower, making them a specialist. Uh, if most people, a lot of companies that you probably deal with get a significant portion of their revenue from word of mouth or referrals. That's good and it's bad. It's good because it's an affirmation. It's their buyer base thinks them valuable enough and prizes them high enough to tell other people. But normally, if you have reactive referral generation as your driver, it's episodic, it's intermittent. One day, week, month, you get X, the other, you get something, nothing. Well, if you think about it, a referral generated buyer buys sooner, more negotiates less, buys more, uh, is more enjoyable to deal with, stays longer, refers more people, costs nothing. And yet the same people who get a lot of business or much of it from referral they spend money on the outside market trying to attract what I call outer peripheral trust, which is very hard to convert to a buyer. And it's very inefficient. Whereas if you had at least one, we know 125 strategic referral generating systematic approaches that you could put in place to predictably multiply the quantity, quality, and convertibility of referral generating business that comes through. I can go on and on and on, but there's just a lot of stuff, man.
You've used these kind of strategies to really become the dominant force in multiple different markets. So, what's your best advice for somebody else? I mean, what's the benefits of being the dominant force in a market? And what's your best advice for somebody that's trying to become that dominant force in their market?
Well, I'm going to give it to you a number of ways, and it's not arrogant. This is just to be very candid. You can command $120,000 for a day of your time. That's one benefit. You can get Tony Robbins to let you do a day together with him to his most precious group of people, his $150,000 members. You can get to travel the world and be paid very handsomely and be given 2 first-class tickets and the presidential suite. There's a lot of perks, but probably more than that is you're operating in a rarefied strata of understanding and impact, and the world looks like a 3D movie, and you have the only pair of glasses. It's much more exhilarating when you're operating as a preeminent person, whether it's you're running a company or whether you're a preeminent team member, manager, employee, whatever. It's night and day. I don't know if that answer is what you wanted to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think? And when you've talked about the benefits of being there, what do you think are some of the best strategies that somebody can deploy besides what you talked about to be able to become that dominant force?
It, we did a mini course a couple of years ago on achieving greatness. And my premise then, Ty, was that every human being is innately programmed in their DNA to want to be great. Nobody wants to be a mediocre entrepreneur, professional, salesperson, employee, man, woman, husband, wife, parent, friend, lover. But most people are. And the first thing is to understand what greatness looks like. And you can't do it unless you think about people you admire that personify different elements of greatness. We identified, I think, eight categories. Then you got to see all these categories where you fall in terms of that, and then you've got to decide which of those gaps is the most mission critical to whatever you're trying to work on, your life, your being, your marriage, your children, your business, your career. But the hardest thing is to find the safest path to get there. Most people can't do that. And they also need an advocate. In your case, with people who are trying to rebuild their business credit, you're their advocate, your team. In my case, I'm the advocate that won't allow people to undervalue their business, their product, their service. I'm someone who believes that if you are adding more value to the marketplace than you're generic competitors, you have a moral obligation to reach as many people as you can, not because you're going to make a lot more money, but because they will be disserved by lesser value creating competitors, and they will be horribly served if they equivocate, procrastinate, and don't take action. So I think you have to reset your mental models. Number one, I think you've got to understand that preeminence is not about working just hard. It's about really a bunch of different things. The first is you want to be on a mission, a crusade in behalf of the market you serve. You don't want to just fall in love with making money. You don't want to fall in love with your company or even your product or service. You want to fall in love with the people you serve, and you want to see the work you do, the product you sell, the service, when it's at work in their life is enhanced, their life is protected, their life is enriched, their life is entertained, depending on what product or service is. You want everybody in your organization to be on a mission. You want to basically understand the user experience, the friction factors, and eliminate a lot of things. But most people don't even get to that point because they're in it to make money, and it becomes laborious. Instead of making it boring, I find that if you have the right mindset, if you're operating at a preeminent rarefied strata, everything is exhilarating. Even problems are fascinating because it's a challenge to resolve them and learn from them and build on them. And it's a whole different way of thinking, being, acting, and it's much more externally focused.
Brian had made a suggestion, and I thought it was creative, something I've never done on a podcast interview before, because you are so knowledgeable about the questions I'm asking you. If you don't mind, ask me a question. What do you think that business owners are interested to know but maybe don't know about business credit? If you had to ask a question.
Sure. Well, I think that most people don't understand my observation, because I did a book with a guy named Roland Frazier on the title was Business Wealth Without Risk, and it had to do with acquiring business, and it had a lot of very inventive ways to use credit and financial sources to really get control of underperforming businesses. I think the first thing is that most people don't realize that credit is usually with growth companies, either credit or are giving away equity in the business. You need a vehicle. Most companies, to try to grow internally just on your own cash flow, you're going to be very limited unless you're a lifestyle entrepreneur. So instead of fearing credit, you should appreciate it. You need to be judicious, but without it, I would say you're probably limited in your growth and your success, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I would say very much so. As a matter of fact, I think business credit's more valuable than consumer credit because as an entrepreneur, so much of our net worth is tied up in our business. And business credit inherently just makes the business worth
Yeah.
substantially more money. I've had a chance to spend time with Roland and teach a lot of his students be able how to do that. And it's astonishing them how much even business credit itself can help them make the decision of the businesses they want to acquire
But they
because
don't
those
really,
businesses are
yeah.
worth.
And my point to you is, I don't think most people, I think they look at it as a uh, as a negative that they feel is going to bite them in the butt, and they don't understand it's the greatest leverage tool if you have the right strategy and if you've got the right business model. If you don't have a model that is going to grow because you get credit, and you don't have a model that growth is going to produce enough incremental profit gain that'll easily service that credit, then you probably shouldn't do it. But if you understand that, if you look at 90% of the largest companies that everybody admires, and they look at their stock, almost every one of them has enormous layers of debt. That's the only way they can grow. They either have debt or they've given up a lot of their equity to venture capitalists and private equity and those. But financing is the lifeblood of outsized growth. But most people who are not major companies they're financially illiterate in terms, not demeaning them, just clinically in terms of their understanding of the power of using business credit strategically.
You talked about having the model that if you have the right model and you have the money, that's when you can really accomplish exponential growth. What's your best advice for everybody out there that's trying to figure out their way? They're trying to figure out the best model for their business to be able to set on fire, to be able to reach those levels of exponential growth.
Well, I think it's start where you are and see what you know about your business. What's the average sale worth? What's the average uh, uh, residual value, lifetime value? But how much, if you get 100 new buyers, what are you going to make the first time on them? How much more could you add to that ethically with an upsell? How much downsell could you use to get revenue from the ones that currently don't buy your one offering? How many repurchases could you get in a period of time? What would those repurchases produce in combination as far as profit? If you had more funding to expand that front end, the number of buyers, or the back end, acquiring more products to sell, what would the worst case, best case outcome be? What would the margins be? How much extra? How can you test it before you get yourself in too much trouble? And what's the highest and best use of it? Is it advertising? Is it sales force? Is it partnerships outside? And I think most people live in a very, very limited world of understanding, and without expanded knowledge, you can't really capitalize on the explosive opportunities that judicious strategic use of credit in business can provide. I mean, it's hilarious. We've had people that had a very successful small business, and we would say to them, so why don't you turn into a larger one? And they said, well, I just don't have the capital. And I'd say, let's just do the numbers. And I'd show them that every time they brought in a brand new, like if they brought in 10 prospects and they got 4 buyers, and that buyer bought 5 things a year, and each time they made X, I showed them, you have a money machine. If you go to any hard money investor who invests for a premium over normal mortgage, and you gave them a multiple on that and a piece of the upside, and you proved to them unequivocally that when you invest X, it's going to produce multiple X's in year one, you can get all the money you want, but they don't understand that.
Jay, you've covered so much phenomenal information and actionable advice. What shouldn't I have asked you? What didn't I ask you that I should have asked that will give people that are listening the best insight of some things they can do right now to be able to be on the path of exponential growth in revenue and profits?
Well, I think that if you're talking about looking for breakthroughs that will give you better possibilities for explosive growth, most breakthroughs don't come from doing what everybody else does in your industry. That's follow the herd mentality. And at most, you could be incrementally better, but it's incrementally, it's not going to be exponentially. The true breakthroughs in life, Ty, come usually from outside your industry. If you think about it, things like fiber optics that transformed telecommunication was not created for telecommunication. It was from aerospace and borrowed. FedEx basically created a whole multi-billion dollar industry by borrowing what's called the hub and spoke check clearing system that the Federal Reserve Bank uses to make sure that they clear checks early in the morning so that people don't bounce checks. Either the ballpoint pen or roll-on deodorant borrowed the methodology from one another. Let's see, a Rogaine came from pimples. Viagra came from heart. The number one baby buggy manufacturer in the country, they do $400 million, borrowed the collapsible wheels from airplanes. So I would say travel outside your industry often and study what's happening everywhere that you can borrow. We have a couple of concepts. One is borrowing from billions, and the other is modeling for millions. Most people think best practices are the cat's meow. In truth, best practices, meaning doing what everybody else is doing, not only are limited, if you're the first person or group of people in your industry to learn them, you have a very short-term window of opportunity, but it's something that everybody learns, so it becomes standard operating procedure. I mean, I can go on and on, but there's a just a starting point.
Jay, it's been an honor and I've appreciated having you on. There's a lot of people right now that want to dive deeper. They want to learn more about your strategies, your philosophies, the things that have made you successful, access trainings. What action should they take right now to be able to get more insight from you?
Well, I mean, we serve private clients and we're expensive, and we have two. I think we have 5 terabytes of IP that I've created over the years that are pretty evergreen. We don't aggressively sell it, but if somebody wants to learn more, they can get a hold of me at jay at abraham.com. They can go to our website and there's a lot there. But if they really are serious, we have stuff that is we've created, as you said, $50 billion of profit increases estimated, not revenue. So there's a lot. They're very powerful methodologies I've been blessed to learn, Ty, and they are universal. We've used them not just in 1,000+ industries, but we had the number one company in 2 categories in Japan, the number one company in 3 categories in China, the number one company in 4 categories or 5 in Australia, the number one company in its category in Italy, in Vietnam. So it's very universal principles that work everywhere as long as you work them.
Jay, thanks again for coming on with us today.
My honor. Thank you. I hope it had value. And thank you again for that great buildup in the beginning.
Oh, you've accomplished so much. Like I said, we could be here the whole time just talking about the accolades. And we're just so appreciative of what you've done to help us entrepreneurs grow our businesses.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So listen, as I always say, the knowledge doesn't mean anything if you don't take action, right? And there's a couple actions you should take depending on where you are. If you are a $10 million plus entrepreneur business, then what you want to do is you want to go to abraham.com/coaching consulting. That's abraham.com/coaching consulting. You can learn more about working with Jay one-on-one. Yes, it is possible. You can actually even apply right there on that page. If you're not at that level yet, then we need to get you there. And the way to get you there is to go to abraham.com. That's abraham.com. And that will get you access to a lot of things. He's got his knowledge center there. He's got access to his products, his programs, amongst many other things that can help you get what you need to be able to drive to the $10 million business, where then you can go and have an opportunity to work directly with Jay. So make sure that you go to abraham.com to check out all the resources that are there. And also make sure that you go to abraham.com/coaching consulting to learn more about working one-on-one with Jay. Thank you very much for taking time to tune in today. I hope you have a great day. Take care.